So it's on 2 pages. The pages flip this way, but your staples in that one. So I recommend just ripping it off of the staple. I don't know how far it got here, so I'll hang out in this general area. I was telling. So yeah, so they flip this way. So rip them off the staple. The staple was on the wrong side from the flipping. So for the guys who don't know me, my name is Shance Sizemore. I'm the CEO of the Bedford Chamber of Commerce and the Lawrence County Economic Growth Council. Yep, the CEO, big fancy title, means somebody says I'm in charge. Today, I spoke to you guys in the past, but today I'm going to really focus on the Lawrence County Economic Growth Council side. For those who don't know, so 2 organizations, I have 2 separate budgets, 2 separate missions, 2 separate boards, 2 separate fundraising, all that good stuff. So the chamber side, we focus on business advocacy, business education, and networking. For example, if you guys want to go to our business after hours, it will be next Thursday, the 19th. That'll be hosted by McIntyre Brothers. So we've got new ownership, so it's a great time to get out there and meet the new folks. So you guys all are invited to attend that at 5 to 7. Who was that again? McIntyre Brothers. Yep, it's now reached 3rd generation of the family, even though Mr. Decker does not have the name McIntyre. And then, so today I'm going to talk a little bit about the Lawrence County Economic Growth Council, what we do, the impact in the community. I'm typically pretty open and honest and want to be kind of relaxed. So if you guys have any questions, anything that pops in your head during that one, feel free to raise your hand, ask questions. We can have a conversation if you'd like. So the first slide, if you start at the beginning and flipped it over, is just our mission. And ultimately, we are in charge of business retention, expansion, and attraction to the community, ultimately increasing investment and job opportunities for our citizens. So that comes in any number of pieces. I often warn people that economic development has a ton of mission creep because anything that people either don't want to work on or don't know how to work on becomes an economic development issue. So I'll do some kind of pre-Shance in the economic development space. Most economic development organizations started around business attraction. So back in the 70s, there was this proliferation of economic development organizations in the state of Indiana, and their sole purpose was to go out and try to bring that next manufacturing plant into town. So they were traveling the country, drinking whiskey, smoking cigars, playing golf, whatever they had to do to try to get those attractions. That kind of happened 80s, early part 90s, and you started getting this trend of retention and expansion. So what we know is about 80% of all job growth in communities pretty much across the board comes from existing industry. So that's, small mom and pop shop going from 5 to 15 people to, 50 to 100 people. That's GM, who's already got a location in town, spending X million dollars and increasing their, the wages and the number of employees there. So that's where the primary point of growth comes from in any community. And so those were really the 2 major spaces up until the last, I'd say, 10 years. Then things got real crazy. They started saying, okay, well, you know what, to attract these companies, you're going to need the workforce that's necessary. So, workforce programming has been, well, if you follow the news right now, you'll see Lilly CEO on everything talking about the issues with Indiana's workforce. The state can have their opinion and what's going on and the politicians, et cetera. What we know on the ground and the business side is, if you can't find people to work the jobs that's necessary for you to hire, you're going to go where they are. So educational attainment, whether that be credentials, college education, certificates or just skill sets are mission critical to local companies expanding, maintaining their position in the community, and future growth or attraction of any kind of new industry to the community. So we've added that to our piece. If you met Joe Timbrook or know Joe Timbrook, he is over that portion of our work for the Economic Development Agency. Entrepreneurship and business startup. So that was my area of expertise when I was in Evansville. So, you know, it's really easy to go on the Secretary of State website, pay $75 and get a business entity. The hard part is when you start having to do sales and marketing and getting customers and paying your bills and taxes and all the other stuff. And so we have great relationships with the Small Business Development Center. They're based out of Ivy Tech, Bloomington. Those guys will come down, work out of our office with our folks. There's a certain segment or a subset of those people that, you know, they may not have the expertise to work with, and then I will help coach those folks as well. So I've worked with tech startups. I got a couple guys who are just, you know, spinning off manufacturing startups right now, which is kind of fun and exciting. You know, I got a call a couple weeks ago from a guy I've known for a long time in Mitchell. He's like, "Hey, I already have customers, and they want me to produce this thing, but I don't have a building to build it in." And so, you know, I think he's kind of commandeered his garage at the moment, but just working with these kind of different phases I wanted to start something, I have no idea how to do it, to I have this thing that I'm already doing, but it's gotten out of hand. So we'll see that. And then the last piece that I said, this is where I really see that mission creeping and kind of goes is the community development piece. So there's a lot of things that impact where people decide to live and work. One of those is, you know, what type of community do we have? Do you have access to outdoor recreation? Do you have access to parks and community? And how good is your school? And do you have broadband? I can tell you, we just moved. So on top of it, so I have a new child. She's 2 weeks old. The month before that, we moved to a new house. So I used to live over here by the middle school. I now live up in the Judah area. But we looked at, I think, every house that was on the market, which is right now not very many. But one of the houses we looked at, beautiful house, brand new, redone, probably a little out of our price range, but it was a no-go as soon as we walked in because they didn't have cell phone service. And my options for internet were satellite. And so good luck selling a house without internet and the modern economy, because my wife works from home a portion of the time. So we've become internet experts and park experts and trying to be school experts. So you have all this stuff that kind of gets thrown in our lap. And I'll tell you, because I've had a lot of questions over the last year of, you know, school-wise, you know, what do companies that ask me, what do they care about? And, you know, we want, like, they've never asked me what mascot you are, or, you know, how many building locations you have, or any of that stuff. And that's for the local community to decide. What they care about is what quality of education are they getting? Are they getting? And so what drives me is I want every school that opens or is in operation in our community to be the best it can be, because when you look at school grades and you see a C or a D, and there's a community just up the road has an A school, they're going to that A school because parents care where they send their kids. And if their kids start in Monroe County school system, getting them out of Monroe County school system back into Lawrence County is a no-go, or it's very hard, let's put it that way. So it's an important piece. No matter where you're at, we want those kids to have the best education possible. You know, college education, credentialing, it doesn't have to be. So obviously we know that not everybody has to go to college to have a successful career, but they have to be lifelong learners. Nobody stops learning when they, you know, graduate high school, or maybe don't graduate high school. If you stop learning at that point, you're not going to survive a career. And so we have to get our people in our community willing to say, you know what, to get that next step, to get that next pay raise, to go to that next position, I need to learn X. And to do that, we have to, you know, utilize the library, online resources, Ivy Tech, college, whatever any of those resources it may be. The next few slides, I just want to kind of hit a couple of the local economy things that I think are important for everybody to understand and know. So I mentioned workforce became a big issue. That one, and it started in our house, in our organization, pre-pandemic. About 5-6 years ago now, you had companies coming and saying, under the former administration, it's like, I can't find people. I can't find qualified people. We were at that point, for that time, record low unemployment. They couldn't get people in the door to work with the skill sets necessary. And so we said, okay, well, we've got to figure out something. There's got to be something we can do. And I'm super proud of the efforts we've been, but we still have our challenges as a community. So on the local, obviously you can read it, but so our local unemployment number right now is hovering below that 3%. So I think we're at, the last one was 2.8%. So you're talking about historical low averages across the board for Lawrence County. We have traditionally a high or a lower workforce participation rate than the rest of the state of Indiana. So we hang about 3 to 4% below the state average of workforce participation. So that's people who are of working age 16 to 65, 64, who could work. We're just over 50% of our workforce, right around 50% of our workforce, or people who could be working are participating in the workforce. There's a couple reasons that could possibly be a little skewed for us. One is, so you're going to have some of those people are going to be in high school. So 16 to 18, you got a few of those people in high school, but those people are everywhere. The other thing that we see pretty common across the board is we trend way older than the state average. So we're an older community. So when you get on average older, you have on average more people who are maybe disabled, who have health issues that are keeping them out of workforce. You also have generational changes in workforce participation. We actually have a higher participation rate of women in our workforce than we do of men. So kind of an odd number, but the big things to know is that one. So we're trending older. That's probably not a surprise when you think about the community as a whole, but trending older, low unemployment rates. And then we've had a decrease in overall population in the last census. So 2020 census, we saw a small decrease in our population. And so I know Sam, the mayor, said, how is that possible when everybody's yelling about I need houses and we need places to live? And so part of it's that trending older piece. So you have people who my age having less kids. People are moving. A lot of people who are moving into the community are, empty nesters. Maybe their kids have already graduated, or they don't have. They have one kid or no kids. So they're moving to the community, occupying households, but our overall household size is actually declining. That has a string of effects. Our local schools, now no longer have as many kids sitting inside the seats, and they don't get paid as much, or they're not getting as much money to operate their facilities, to pay the teachers, to all of those things kind of compound each other. So important things to note. Yes.
You have rankings data measures by county. So in order to understand that, how many counties are there total?
92.
92.
Yep, 92.
92.
Correct. So, for example, I'll pick on the unemployment rate. I mentioned that one earlier. It's typically a terrible number to look at overall health of the economy. I have very little control of the unemployment rate. We trend the way the national trend is. If national unemployment rate's up, we're up, et cetera. 29 is not where I want to be, but I will say 6 years ago when I started, we were number 3. We had the 3rd highest in the state of Indiana. We spent probably the first 2 or 3 years here, my first 2 or 3 years here in the lowest 10 in the state of Indiana. So for us to start going up the chain and now routinely in the upper 20s, moving closer to that 30 mark, makes me happy. It makes me proud of, our local business and industry. It means we're doing something right in that space, that we're moving up that ladder. So
I think for years, we were 2 or 3% above
Yep.
Indiana average, and now we're below.
So that's a win across the board, and that's attributable to things that are happening in the local economy and not the national side. Any other questions so far? I mentioned, some of the growth, and I'm not going to go through every project that I've worked, and you don't have enough time. I don't know how much time I actually have left. Oh, I got 5 minutes. Look at that. I got like 17 pages to go. Yes.
All right, so it's sort of a catch-22. So you want to develop the economy, but if you don't have people have the jobs, how does it work? Are we at full development if we don't have workers?
So that's an excellent question. So some of the things that I am thinking about right now. So one of them is, we know at some level, not necessarily the majority of them, there are still people who will move to a community for a job. That's a given. People move to our community every month who, they find a job, they open. So having job opportunities is a big deal. Having companies that have wages that are attractive to bring people here is a big deal. Knowledge of what's available is a huge deal. So, if you have children who are, across the United States, and probably the vast majority of children who come out of our high school have no idea the job opportunities are available in our community. They may drive past Infab, and they probably know that, Susie's mom works at GM, and Billy's dad works at Infab and PRD. They may drive past them and know them, but, do they know that they have, a marketing arm inside of, they know engineers at GM. One of the lists of only projects nodes, Barbaricum, they just moved in this past year. They're just down the block from Tracy there in Owen County. They do cybersecurity and programming for the Department of Defense. So, if folks who are going, have a programming degree and want to be a cybersecurity expert, you have to know that sign on the outside of the door that says Barbaricum means that that's what they're trying to hire for. And so there's some of that. I'm not going to pretend like I can wave a magic wand and have people start procreating. I just done my duty and replaced us. So the other one is, how do we attract people in? And so it's something I've had conversations with even some people in the room, like, what does a people attraction strategy look like for our community? What is our community even comfortable with in that people attraction strategy? If you look across the board, rural communities that are growing are doing it primarily through immigration. So Washington, Indiana is a close by example where they've seen a lot of growth, both in the Latino population and the Haitian population, through various different efforts and kind of happenstance in some of it. Columbus, Indiana is very Latino and Japanese and Asian driven. And so, there's communities further north who have, various, I talked to Tim about one, South Bend, there's a group of Orthodox Jews who actually self-attract other Orthodox Jews from the East Coast. And they said, hey, you know what? We have everything you need to live here. It's much cheaper than living in, New York or New Jersey. Could you come move here? We have, your kosher deli and your place of worship and your education system. So we have the stuff necessary. So there are strategies around that. We as a community have to come up with those. So it's a long-term piece that we're working on. I will kind of quickly run through a couple of the big things. So on your list, you have projects and notes. So these are just some of the big things you probably saw in the news or splashy. Some of them are good. So in the last 2 years, GM has now invested close to $100 million into their facility, or will be investing. I feel like I've worked a project with them about every year. None of those projects actually were incentivized. So they're investing because they see a future in GM. One of the best things that I've seen happen is the move to the Silverado electric vehicle, because the Silverado nameplate is not going away. Even if that vehicle doesn't sell as well as they would, they're going to keep the Silverado around. That means we still have relevance. What I didn't want to see happen was those investments go to another community. We, in 2035, when Maribera says they're going to be full electric, we haven't gone that way. And then we're sitting on with a bunch of engines and transmissions that are no longer being used. So I see light at the end of the tunnel for us in that facility, which is great.
That's a question.
Yes.
I'm just wondering why you didn't mention what's happening down at Lehigh.
Oh, so
That's huge, right?
yeah. So that was, the main reason that's not on those is because the announcement was in 2017.
So it's several years earlier.
Correct. Yeah. So the thing with projects in this space is I don't stop working on them after they're announced. So 2017. Yeah. So those 2 years, those were the kind of, not all of the little ones, but those are kind of the big announcements that's happened in those years. Lehigh, $650 million project currently being built out.
Changing the landscape.
It is completely changing the landscape in Mitchell. I started that project almost as soon as I got here. I think there were 5 of us who were allowed to know until they did the announcement. But every hotel is full. Restaurants are crazy busy if you go about the time that those folks get off work, really driving a lot of money and investment into our local economy, which is great. Actually, 2 of the active projects that are kind of in the pipeline for this year are going to be spinoffs of that investment in Lehigh. Working, one of my strategies going forward is, since it says I'm late, is, Lehigh has made this investment. They're going to have excess capacity. So how do you keep going? And so how do you build off that capacity? Who's using their cement down the line? Can they produce it or supply Lehigh at a closer than they're currently existing? So yeah, it's not stopping. I'll let you read the workforce goals. Yes.
Okay, what's the difference between an active and a hot?
Aha. Yeah. So yeah, I got all these terminologies. I didn't even start talking about like my secret code names or anything like that. So an active project is I am working it. There's still it's still being possible. So when I get a project in from any number of sources, I get people who directly call me. I get people who send me leads from the state of Indiana. Radius Indiana sends me leads. So anybody, you can call me, hey, Shance, somebody X wants to maybe look at this area. And so that becomes a project. If I'm still doing work toward that project, that's an active project. Hot projects are, they have made contact, they've been in the community. I was with a project yesterday and had lunch with them. So they're in the community, they're looking. And so in my mind, there's at least a 50% chance they're gonna land here. So that's kind of the hot number. Yes. Correct. Yes, I can't divulge that one yet. And it depends on the company. So some companies will say like, hey, I'm actively looking. I'll give an example of like Rowena's tenant. Megan is actively looking at opportunities to expand her business. And when we and Radius have been working with her, trying to figure out kind of what's next for her. And so, Genie Supply is a company that, she said, people know that I'm, trying to grow. So that one. Other companies, Lehigh, for example, I had to sign 3 confidentiality agreements just to walk in the door to see who was there. So it varies across the board.
You can trust us.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's live streaming, right? The last page there is the fiber expansion stuff. I suppose it's important. We actually wrote letters of support for all 3 of these projects, and we're continuing to work with those guys. So Jackson County is currently building out east of the community and building out the fiber that direction. Orange County now has plans to go past their kind of traditional REMC boundaries into Mitchell. and into the great, yeah, so yeah, they already have an active proposal looking at building out in the Mitchell area. I think that'll probably start this fallish. And so they're continuing to expand. AT&T kind of in the Northwest Judah area. They have some servers. I think they also have some out in Heltonville. So they're looking at expanding. The county right now is looking at options to help incentivize filling in some of those gaps because there's still large holes in our community who, don't have basic internet access. So next time I'll have to go a little shorter. Yeah.